It was always interesting to hear Paul Finebaum talk about Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, and he has an understanding of that situation over there uh, that most of us don't have. I mean, just being straight, a lot of people don't like Paul Finebaum, which is whatever. But one thing he said today after the draft was very interesting to me, at least. And I hear this a little bit behind the scenes, mainly from people not at Georgia, which is that there's obviously that there's a rivalry, I guess you could say, at between Nick and Kirby. I think understandably, and this is what Paul said, and I think he was talking about this just a little bit. He says, "Rarely has Nick Saban had to sit anywhere and watch someone else dominate the NFL draft, and that someone else just happens to be Kirby Smart." All right, so what is that really like? What is the code there? The funny that now that I read that out loud, um, one thing that I wrote about not so long ago over on Dog Post in a What We Were Hearing column is that had Nick won this title, it might be that he's closer to retiring, but that he lost to Kirby. One person I really respect and has been around the Alabama ball game for a long time said, that it was Kirby that might motivate Nick to stick around for a while. I don't know what's what as far as that relationship's concerned. I do know that this moment here in DAWGSTRUCTION, you can pick up your link below. I'm running low on these. I'm just going to tell you right now that led to this celebration from Kirby and the guys. The link is down below. I am running low. That is not made up. So get it now before it gets too late in the ball game here for graduations and Father's Day. I can sign it for you if you want. That moment was not a surprising moment for some of us. I mean, I thought that should have happened, right? Did Nick think that was supposed to happen? I mean, Nick Saban did not have the better team coming into this thing. He did not. He did not have the better team. Georgia was the better team. The odds makers had him as a 7 point touchdown, as a 7 touchdown, as a 7 point favorite in Atlanta. Had him as like a 3-ish. Now I'm kind of forgetting. I think it was 2.5 or 3 in Indianapolis. God, it was so cold up there. So they thought that Georgia had the better team. The question was if the Dogs could get the job done, which they did. Now, moving forward, the question is, you know, will Georgia push Alabama out of the way in a way that would make Alabama very uncomfortable about its present and its future? For me, that's going to be very hard to do. I mean, Alabama losing one game, albeit in the national championship, Alabama losing one game does not fracture what has been built over there over a long time. Now, one thing that was said to me by the person that I know very well with Alabama, such good Alabama ties, was he said, hey, he did lose to 2 assistants this year. Does that matter in any way? I mean, I don't know that it does, but you know, it all adds up. And, you know, we've seen over the last 6, say 5 recruiting cycles, somewhere in that ballpark, that Georgia has not just pulled even, but has started throwing punches to Alabama's face, throat, neck, whatever you want to call it. They have passed them in the recruiting game. So it can't be shocking. They've passed them at times in the recruiting game, not all the time. It can't be shocking that Georgia got a win, right? They just happened to get the win in the national championship game. I mean, this moment, you tell me that Bama wasn't after Keely Ringo? Oh, of course they were. They just didn't get him. You know, the players on the field matter. I would say they matter more than the coaches. But you can't. That's chicken and egg, right? Because they wouldn't be there without the coaches. But this one moment right here with AD Mitchell, that was against an Alabama player who's not super experienced. And that's something that's one thing that Nick touched on in the offseason. I don't think he was wrong. I think he was right. He wasn't making excuses. He was giving an explanation. Those are two very different things. But, you know, when AD got that ball and Georgia took the lead for good, uh, that was against, I'm looking for the player's name here, and I'm not immediately finding it, from Alabama. But he wasn't a super experienced guy. He was a younger guy. And I can't help but think, if Drake Kirkpatrick was out there, would that be happening? With some of these sick DBs that Alabama's had in the past, would that be happening? I don't know. I don't know. But that's where the recruiting all adds up. He beat Kyrie Jackson on that play on train DT red tank double go, and then Kirby's group. I mean, if you want to call it backed it up, I don't know about backed it up, but then the draft, you're sitting there watching Kirby Smart and his players take a victory lap and then some. 5 players in the first round, 15 players. I mean, 15 players, like, that ain't normal at all. I mean, it's never happened. But I'm just saying that is an exceptional run of guys. Now, Alabama will come into this thing as the number one team, the odds-on favorite to win. However, the team right behind them, it's not like Georgia's just fallen on the ground, looking for ways to get out of playing this coming season. They are the next favorite. They are they are more than double likely to win, according to odds makers, in Ohio State. And that's with Bama and Georgia both in the SEC. The remarkable thing about the odds right now is that Bama and Georgia both, we know they will play one another in Atlanta, right? And if they don't, Texas A&M is going to be there. With that still said, Alabama and Georgia have odds that high, and yet we know that they will play each other in theory, right? When you look at Ohio State, there's nobody that they play until Michigan that is in their way. When you look at, well, I would argue Notre Dame perhaps, but Michigan's ranked higher in terms of the odds makers. Clemson, obviously, there's nobody in their way. The ACC is extremely, limited with where they're at. I mean, Mark Schlabach's got NC State in his top 10. Okay. And then you've got, Miami, which is starting over. Clemson is not what it's been in the past, but you can see they have third best odds. Why? Because, fourth best odds, which are double what Ohio State's are. Okay, so they're not unbelievable. 4 times less likely to win the national championship than Georgia, 6 times less likely to win it than Alabama. They don't have each other in the way. They don't have anybody in their way. Bama and Georgia are right on top of each other. What is Nick Saban thinking in this offseason? Do you think he's just taking it the easy? That's not who this guy is. Like, that's not what's going on. Rarely has Nick Saban had to sit anywhere and watch someone else dominate the NFL draft, and that someone else just happens to be Kirby Smart. Is Paul trying to insinuate, as occasionally he does, that there's a little bit of friction there? Or is it just that Paul is understanding what the future, or excuse me, what the reality is, which is, Nick is a great competitor, the greatest coach in college football history. We're not going to have this discussion. But he's having to watch someone who helped him build the dynasty at Alabama, a protege of his for sure, someone that would not be where they're at without Nick, for at least this year, surpass him. Just for the year. Mark Ingram, don't get triggered. Don't freak out on me yet. Hey, pick up DAWGSTRUCTION. Links down below.